Hello, this is Philosopher signing in once again with another edition of C-Block. And today I want to discuss a very important subject, the subject which is misunderstood, mischaracterized, and that is the Palestinian conflict, Israeli conflict, and the lies that have been perpetuated about the Middle East conflict, and I want to talk about the lie here. The student, David Horowitz Freedom Center, has provided a good resources called the Palestinian Wall of Lies. If you want to go to it, I'm gonna just type in walloflies.org, and you can see for yourself. I'm gonna read each one of them. There are about 10, so it's gonna take me a while to read it. But I wanted to do this because on a special important date is coming. Is May 15th is gonna mark Independence Day for Israel, and this year there's gonna be a protest gonna be made on that day by the Arabs. There's rumors of launch of another flotilla to be launched at that day. So that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about this, and I want to organize a protest in support of Israel that day too. So commemorating its day of independence. Okay, back to the Wall of Lies. Okay, I'm gonna read it. All 10 of them. Lie number 1: Jews have no historical connection to Israel. That's a lie. Jews have lived continuously in the land of Israel for over 3,000 years. The Arabs arrived through multiple invasions, beginning in the 7th century. In the year 70 AD, when the Jewish civilization was already over 1,000 years old, the Romans forced most of the Jews of Judea and Samaria, now the West Bank, into exile. By the 19th century, the majority of the population of Jerusalem was Jewish. Line number 2: The Quran describes Jerusalem as a holy to Islam. The Quran does not mention the Quran does not mention Jerusalem because Muhammad never set foot in the city. Jerusalem was conquered by Muslim armies in 1636 AD after the death of Muhammad. Muslim jihadists claim that the Quran mentions the furthest mosque al-Isk in Arabic, and this is a correct reference to Jerusalem. This is lie. The Al-Aqsa mosque in Jerusalem had not been built when the Quran was written, so the reference is some other or any other furthest mosque. In contrast, Jerusalem is and always has been holy to Jews. The daily prayers of Jews are focused on Israel. The Hebrew Bible mentions Zion and Jerusalem a total of 809 times. The Temple of Solomon is not Jewish. This is a lie. This lie is one of the many designed to steal the history of the Jews in order to justify erasing them from the Middle East. When the Palestinian Authority was established in 1994, it immediately began a campaign to delegitimize Israel by rewriting history with the intention of denying Israel's right to exist. Among its false claims is the remains of the Temple of Solomon. The Western Wall are in fact the remnants of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on the top of the temple after the Muslim conquest to humiliate the conquered. This is the same imperialist tensions that prompts jihad today to build mosques at ground zero, the site of the 9/11 attacks. Lie 4. Israel occupies Arab Palestine. This genocidal claim by Muslims, the Muslim Student Association, and other pro-Arab groups, it is genocidal because it violates the Jewish states. If Israel is actually occupied Palestine, then there's no legitimate Jewish state in the Middle East. In fact, there was never an Arab state called Palestine, and no one even claimed that there was until well after the United States created Israel in 1948. The land on which Israel was created by the UN was also used by colonial powers to create Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Jordan. It was the land that belonged to Turkey for 400 years. The Turks are not Palestinians and are not even Arabs. There was never an Arab country called Palestine or inhabited by Palestinians. Before the creations of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1964, which was 16 years after the birth of Israel, no political entity was called by that name. It is important to note that Palestine, when it was under the occupation of the British, was referred to as the areas, a large group of land, mostly Jordan and what is now the Israeli state of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel. Life 5. Israel is an apartheid state. Apartheid refers to a system created by South African in which not white residents of the nations were denied citizenships and basic civil rights and were forced to live in separate residential areas were segregated and featured in inferior education and medical services. Those wishing to demonize and destroy Israel now falsely call it an apartheid state. But the only true apartheid states in the Middle East are Islamic states in which Jews are not allowed to live in and where Christians, Baha'is, and other religious minorities are objects of discrimination and persecution. There are 1.4 million Arabs living in Israel with the civil rights that are the envy of the Arab world. Israeli Arabs vote in Israel's elections, have representatives in Israel's parliament, sit on Israel's courts and on the Israeli Supreme Court, and serve as tenured professors teaching in Israeli colleges and universities. The Arab citizens of Israel have more rights and enjoy more freedom, education, and economic opportunity than the inhabitants of any Arab or Muslim state. Lie 6. The Arabs want peace and a state on the West Bank. That's a lie. The Arabs rejected peace and a state on the West Bank first in 1948, and when it was offered to them by the UN, and then in 2000 when it was offered by President Clinton and Barack. In 1949, the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which the UN had designated as a homeland for the Arabs, were annexed respectively by Jordan and Egypt when the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed in 1964. Its commitment made no mention of liberating the West Bank or Gaza from Jordan and Egypt. The PLO leadership stated that their goal was to push the Jews into the sea. Today, the liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea is still the goal of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. The war in the Middle East is about the desires of the Arabs and Muslims to destroy Israel. It is not about the desires for a Palestinian state. Line number 7. The Holocaust is Europe's problem. Palestinians had no role in it. The Arabs generally and the Palestinians specifically were supporters of Hitler in the 1930s. The father of Palestinian nationalism, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, was a devoted Nazi who spent the war in Berlin and worked with members of the Third Reich to plan the death camps for the Jews in the Middle East. Today he is revealed by the Palestinians as the George Washington of their cause. The Muslim Brotherhood translated Mein Kampf into Arabic in the 1930s and called for the destruction of the Jewish state at its birth. Today, Arab leaders called for the destruction of the Jewish state and repeatedly denied that the Holocaust, which their forebears collectively collaborated, actually took place. Israel's security fence, line number 8. Israel's security fence is an apartheid wall. There is 2 lies in one. The West Bank fence is a fence, not a wall. About 90% of the fence is made of chain link material. The remaining 3% is concrete, designed to repel sniper fire in particular areas. The fence was built in 2003 in response of thousands of suicide bombings and rocket attacks on Israel citizens by Palestinian terrorists. Sponsored armed by the Palestinian Authority, the fence was built to keep out terrorists, not Arabs. In the years since the construction of the fence, terrorists have been declined by more than 90%. The fence is Israel's legitimate defense against a ruthless and unmoral terrorist aggressor. Keep in mind that during that time of 2003 is the second Intifada, and there was a lot of terrorist attacks, so Israel needed to have a barrier against onslaught of suicide bombings. Alright. Line number 9. Israel is the cause of the refugee problem. The Palestinians claim there are 5 million Palestinian refugees who fled Israel during the 1948 war. This is false. There were only 500,000 Arab refugees from the 1948 war, and an unprovoked war that Egypt and 4 other Arab states had launched against the newly created state of Israel. In the aftermath of the war, the 500,000 Jewish refugees were driven out of the Arab states in the Middle East. There are no Jewish refugees today, 60 years later, because Israel had resettled them. Why are there still Arab refugees? The Arabs have been given billions of dollars by Israel and the United States to relocate their refugees, but the Arabs are still in refugee camps. While Israel resettled Jewish refugees, no Arab country will take the Palestinians, quote unquote, who were forced into camps and were kept there by the Arab regimes to stir up hatred against the Jews. The refugee issue has been created by the Arab regimes as a weapon in their war against Israel. It should be resolved by resettling the inhabitants of the refugee camps in the West Bank and Gaza, where almost all of them have lived all their lives. Lie number 10. Israel commits war crimes by killing civilians. This is a big lie, coming as it does from the Palestinians who have made terrorist attacks on civilians as a weapon of choice, and who make martyrs and national heroes out of suicide bombers. The Gaza Strip was a base for 7,000 rockets attacks against schoolyards and townships in Israel before the Israelis responded in 2007. During Israel's airstrikes on Gaza rocket sites, there was one civilian death for every 30 terrorists. By contrast, a 2001 study by the International Committee of the Red Cross found that the civilian to military death ratio in wars fought since the middle of the 20th century has been 10-1. 10 civilians deaths for every soldier death. In other words, the Israelis protect civilians at a rate of 300 times greater than any other national army. As Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz observes, no army in history has ever had a better ratio of combatants to civilians killed in a comparable setting. In other words, Israel goes out of its ways to make sure civilians are unharmed. They even warn the civilian populations that they are coming. And on contrast, the suicide bombers, they really target civilians. No, that they don't bomb tanks, Israeli tanks, or military centers. No, the last attack was against a bus. So what does that tell you? Well, anyways, this has been the 10 Palestinian Lies as brought to you by the David Horowitz Center of David Horowitz Freedom Center, and I hope it is enlightening for you. God bless you all, and see you next time.